Hello, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to the Dev Talk Show here on a Wednesday. It is June 12th of 2023, and we're about an hour before stand-up for me, so it's a perfect time for us to get together and bring your cup of coffee or tea or whatever you enjoy in the morning. Sometimes for me that's just a glass of OJ, and I've got my co-host Rich Ross here, who is furiously getting ready to show us some cool stuff.
Yeah.
How's it going,
Morning,
Rich?
everyone.
We have spent the last several episodes working on a template for the Azure Developer CLI, which is also affectionately known as AZD. And one of the things we found, besides the Azure Developer CLI just being a quick way to deploy resources and so on, it has this ability to, with a template, an application, a ready-to-go application that you might get from GitHub or another source. It has the ability to go ahead and deploy the resources that support that application to Azure, and also to deploy the application itself. And it doesn't have to be to one resource. You can either use Bicep or Terraform. At least that's what I've seen in the docs. Maybe you can use more. I always hate when I dislike when I maybe am wrong and limit what the tool can do. But we're using Bicep here and basically saying, hey, here are the resources this application needs. Here's how you deploy it. And so you, as an end user, can see there's a lot of ways that I think this is great. And one is that we're seeing on a website called Awesome AZD is a bunch of templates ready for you to use to pull down different technologies and also different deployment and architecture strategies that you could just try out, deploy, and then see how they work. So yeah, that was all off the cuff. I didn't have a teleprompter for that or anything. So
that was pretty good. Pretty good summary of the last couple of shows. And it's been a lot of fun kind of pulling this together. And it's been helpful because this isn't the only project I've been doing this with. There's a couple of other projects internally where we found these awesome repos and like, all right, we've got to get them deployed into Azure. And this makes it much easier to do that and much more repeatable for some of the things that we do, where we can spin it up quick, we can show it, and then so we don't incur costs, we can spin it back down, which is one of the awesome things about some of the functionality that's inside of that Azure Developer CLI components. So
yeah, that's especially the thing. I think we've talked about the times where, and this happens to all of us who maybe try out Azure, is the times when you spin something up and then you go to bed.
Yeah.
and you forget
or a week
about
goes
it.
by.
Yeah. And I actually have made the case that I think it's the number one reason developers get nervous about trying out a cloud platform is that it's so easy to turn on the spigot, and then especially if you're new to the platform, if you're really new to the cloud platform, you might you go delete a bunch of stuff or deprovision it, and you say to yourself, okay, is it off?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be wrong there. So
yeah, and I go back and there's a on your subscription you can go and look at your cost graph, and it's all right. Did the does it look like it's going to change slope over the course as you watch it for a couple of days to make sure that everything is really shut off? But
yeah, I was taking a quick look to see what does Twitter do with this, because we are broadcasting right now on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And yeah, Twitter just embeds the stream right in there, and looked like it took the customization for the title, which is cool. So we are certainly learning as we go here, and
that's
that's
over on the Dev.
That's the Dev Talk Show on Twitter. Yep.
Okay.
And good morning, that guy Akashi. I love it. What's up, gang? Welcome back. Thank you so much for that warm welcome back. We've been doing this for, I don't know, maybe a little bit less than a month regularly.
Our first morning was back on June 6th.
Oh, well, see, look at that. Rich is such a good historian. That's awesome.
Yeah. I keep looking at the analytics saying, all right, how are we doing?
Yeah, the Wednesday, and we've got to update some things. We've got to update the website. We've got to update even this very YouTube, there's a thumbnail that you can post up to be your live show thumbnail, and it still says, catch us on Wednesday nights. And so
does the banner. We got
oh,
to
that
change
the
that
banner
too.
does too. Okay, yeah. So there's some work to do, and mornings are looking pretty good for the both of us.
Yeah, it's
It's
been
just
fun.
it's been fun. I think a cup of coffee just before stand up has been great, and then to top it all off, it's been our regular Wednesday night time that used to be available, easy to get to. Ironically, for all three of us, kind of changed in different ways. And for example, last year, this coming year, it will be a hockey practice night for my daughter on a team that I'll be on the ice for. So, on the ice, not like the kids who are running around, but I'll certainly be on the ice coaching. So yeah, it's just one of those things. It's all right.
Yeah.
But glad that you've joined us. Great to see everybody, and let's get moving. Should I just switch over to your screen here?
I think we can do that.
Okay.
So
There it
sorry,
goes.
real quick, before you do
Okay.
that.
Oh, wait.
I just want to make sure. I want to.
No, I understand.
Close a couple
Completely.
apps so that I don't accidentally jump back into them.
Yeah, I understand that completely, and then especially when it comes to things like Azure. I know we have some tools that help us, but you still always wonder, okay, what's it going to show again?
Yeah.
Especially because, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, especially go ahead.
Oh, there's a show coming up I'd like to do. So our website's certificates are about to expire, and if we time it just right, because we don't have a huge audience, and at the same time, I don't know that the world relies on the devtalkshow.com. We could even let them expire, and then the next day show how we renew them with Let's Encrypt. That's just what we happen to use, and it's a completely automated process. It's just that you have to there's the one-time setup for the process, and then after that, I actually just, the bad thing is I've almost even forgotten a little bit of what I did, because it's so automated that I just run something from the command line, and that updates the devtalkshow.com, and then I run something else, and that updates devtalkshow.com, because they have both URLs, so both domain names.
So where I wanted to go, because I think that'd be fun. That would be awesome. Because how often, you wind up in that kind of a situation. So let's see how we get ourselves out of it. But what I wanted to look at was, you mentioned things that are in the browser to help mask some of the secure components of Azure. If you want to go to my screen, we can talk a little bit about that, because if you're I think this is kind of, whoa, scrolly mouse got a little crazy there. So AZ mask is the one that we typically look at and point to when we think about sorry, hang on.
It is the one that I have been using, by the way. So
okay, that's good. So can you preamble for like 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure. So AZ Mask is a browser extension that was originally I think released. I want to say that when it came out, there was a Firefox and a Chrome version, and then this was just about the time, or maybe even a little predates when Edge started accepting Chrome.
Sorry, I have to run.
Okay,
go do something real quick. But
yeah, that's okay.
If you want to talk about this, you want to talk about something else, that's cool. Just give me like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. Cool. So, and what it does, in fact, I can even show it in Azure, is if you aren't familiar with it, that what Azure Mask does, it blurs what might be considered sensitive in Azure. So let's see if I can switch over to my screen and we can look at a couple of these things real quick. So I have to say, this is the lesson of why you have your screen ready to go. But it should switch over. And so I have Azure Mask enabled. And I also wonder, do I have Zoom It enabled? Because that would be cool. Oh, look at that. I think I do. So this area right here, which is blurry thanks to Azure Mask. And then I believe if I maybe go to something else, like if I go to the actual web app, no, nothing's blurred here. I don't know that I have a whole lot. Of course, here's the odd thing. The subscription ID is not blurred here. So, blurred here, but not blurred on the next one. Subscription ID is one thing that I haven't often been too worried about. Another thing is that if you use the Azure portal, very often in the upper right corner, you'll see your email address, and that has just been completely removed. So anyways, it's been popular for a long time. I know there's been some, I haven't gotten to keep up with what's going on. And now I'm trying to get out of the Zoom. Now it's like, hey, and all I'm doing there is, oh, actually, you know what I did? I think I know what I did anyway. But I've ruined my own Zoom here. Isn't that awesome? And I can't seem to get out of it. Yeah, I can't seem to break out of it. So it's like, is this some kind of bug in Zoom It? Do we report this directly to Mark Russinovich? That was weird. All right. So one of the things I was talking about is that our website is hosted on Azure, and there's not much to it. There's just an app service and an app service plan. But if I go to the app service, and then I'm pretty sure that this is where I had to, is in certificates. It's not managed certificates. I say bring your own. And oh, look, here's all the past expired ones. And it does tell me, and I think I can delete these. In fact, I know I can. I think I can come through, but that's what happens with an automated process is I'm not deleting these. But it's even telling me, hey, your certificates are expiring soon, and these are what the sites that they manage. And what I actually do not come in here to update these. I have an automated process. And what I really, even though I run it from the command line manually, it's better than nothing. What I would like to do, at least in the future, and maybe we do that on a show, is I would love to get those into perhaps a timed Azure function. They do happen to be PowerShell scripts, so I've been wondering if I can use Azure Functions PowerShell to just basically say, hey, every 80 days or so, because they expire every 90 days, like every 80 days, just go update these. And but that's something that we can try and figure out. And that's how this works today, so that not that our website is the paragon of talk show circuit, but this works thanks to that. Otherwise, if I went to connection is secure and said, hey, let's look at the certificate, these wouldn't line up. It's got to have an expiry date that makes sense for the current time that you're viewing it. So,
cool.
Let's see if I can close this. Yeah, I would like to figure out, since I run some PowerShell to do this, I've been feeling like, shouldn't I be able to use an Azure function, a PowerShell Azure function, put it on a timer of like 75, 80 days, and it just does it.
I like it. I think it's a neat idea to do that with.
Yeah.
Well, what was that?
Okay. All right. So Rich is back.
I'm back. Yeah, I had to fix an
okay.
EV issue. So
that's okay. And in earlier episodes, we did a lot of the steps you'll see here. We created a new project. We initialized the environment, worked through Bicep, updated the deployment. So the Bicep gave us the provisioning of the Azure resources. Azure YAML allowed us to deploy the resources, the application to the resources. And then we took this step last time where we used the dev container stuff. And that was a lot of fun because we got that working in Windows, on GitHub Codespaces, and in Linux. and the Linux was kind of a race to the end there. That was fun.
Yeah, but that was a good race. That was I like that we finished that way because that's a really cool, end to end walking through. So
yeah.
If you want to share my screen,
Yep.
you can go back and cool. You can see that there. So where I was heading, the path we were heading down was we do have Azure Mask, AZ Mask, and we talk about it a good bit. If you're running Chrome, there's very easy ways to get this into Chrome/Edge, but you kind of have to come to the so you kind of have to come out to the GitHub repository because we look at Edge and Edge add-ons. We can look for AZ. We don't really get anything. We can look for Mask, and we don't really get what we're looking for here. Right? There's more results, but we can go through it. It does not show up inside of this here. And so what we typically do is, what's great is there's a Chrome Web Store link, which this extension will certainly work inside of New Edge because it's running, it's got the Chromium components underneath it. Oh, it already thinks I've added it. I must have gone through the steps of doing it. But basically, I started to go down that path of, hey, this is extra steps you've got to do if you're running an Edge, right? You can't just go to because that's what I originally did. Well, it must be in the store. Well, it's not. It's in the Chrome store.
Oh, okay.
And then you got to bring it over this way. So if you did not have it installed, it was a get extension instead of remove extension. So just a note, because I think it's important to have that in there and protect yourself when you're showing off some of the things that you're doing in Azure and other, well, this only works in Azure, so that's really the only place we can kind of protect it on. Okay.
All right. Cool.
Public service announcement over. So we'll close that and that and that. All right. We're going to look at doing, and I think I had it up in the other browser here. This one? Yeah, this one. So we've done a lot of things to get our project up and running and ready. And actually, if you look at, and we'll look at this in a bit, if you look at the things we need to submit a template, we've kind of got everything we needed, right? We've got a dev container, we've got the AZD biceps so that we can go ahead and deploy our application into Azure. But one of the things that we want to do for a little bit of completeness, and actually because this is pretty easy to implement inside of your AZD project, is to create a pipeline and be able to push updates through that pipeline. And because that's, as a developer, that's kind of the state we want to be in, right? We want to be able to write code, commit that code, have it run some tests, and when it gets back to the main branch, push that off into our sandbox, our dev, our first instance of our code. If we're a small project, maybe that goes right to production. Whatever it is that you're certainly working from. And we'll bring the project up. So this is our this is the project we've been working on. It still has Docker files open from last time, but here you'll see there are two folders to be aware of, and that's probably not running, is it? Cool. Bingo. There we go. All right. So you can see we have two folders. We've got a AZDO folder, so the loose abbreviation for Azure DevOps, and we also have a folder here that we've kind of got open, which is why it looks a little funny, for GitHub. So the structure that AZD has given us is, it says, it doesn't matter to us which one of those tools you use. You should be doing DevOps, so you should be using one of them, but pick the one that you're using, and now you've got a structure to go ahead and create the pipeline so that you can do your updates once you commit your code. Wow. Okay. So with that, we're going to focus on GitHub, because right now that's where our project is. It's up in the public repo on GitHub. So we're going to, we get this dev YAML file here. And what this does is essentially gives it's the instructions for deploying our application. And you'll see there are some things in here related to client ID and tenant ID and subscription. And, where do those things come from? Well, we don't have to create a service principal manually and then bring that back in and populate all those values into the secrets area inside of GitHub. We can actually run a command in AZD and have it do all of that for us. So if I go to, let's open up a new terminal, make it full screen, make it really, really big. We probably should see if there's a way to have a terminal window that's in presentation mode, right?
Oh, you mean so set it one way for when you're not working?
A normal way for when I'm working, and then when I'm doing a show like this, hey, this is the one we show because it's already zoomed in. That would be interesting.
So you know what I do?
Go ahead. What do you do?
For the most part, I just work in like 20 point now. I just leave
Your eyes have gotten so used to seeing them that big.
Yeah, I really do. And part of the reason is because I do share my screen a lot at work.
Okay.
And so I kind of feel like, well, but no, you make a good point. It would be nice if there was a little switch that even if it was just something, I don't know where it would live, but I wonder. That would be cool.
Interesting. So sorry, I got distracted. Let's see, do this. We need it on DevTDTS, which is where we're running. It's also in our Blazor application, which is what we're building. So this is where we are. This is what we've been working on. Right, we're down in the command line because we want to run the AZD command. So AZD, and you can tell I was doing some testing. So essentially, there are a number of pipeline commands. So we've seen a number of the different features that AZD provides, right? We did provision, which creates our Azure components. There's a init, which creates a new project, and there are help commands related to each one of those. In this case, looking at the pipeline, we can go ahead and do the configuration components. And what that does is essentially lets it connect securely to Azure. And there are a couple different ways, because right now there's a mechanism inside of GitHub that lets us use something called OpenID to make that connection into our Azure environment with our service principal. And in the other way, in Azure DevOps, we still have to create a connection to Azure, but we need to know everything about that service principal. So we can bring in, you have to bring in the client ID and the secret when we create that up. In this case, over here on the GitHub side, we just need the client ID, and we've made an authentication, an OpenID, what's called a, I believe that we have a tab for it open. We'll walk through it. I believe it's called a workflow, workflow something. But basically, it's a way of having your app registration be aware of a previously made connection to a location, so that we've kind of already pre-authenticated and we know that this pathway is good. That's probably a non-security person's way of describing it, but we'll walk through that when we get to that point. Okay, so let's actually run this command, pipeline config, and we'll walk through the step that it's doing. So here it's actually configuring our GitHub pipeline, because that's what we're defaulted to. It's looking through it. Well, here it's actually going ahead and creating the service principal, and it's creating it with this particular name here, AZDev 712, so date and time, so that it actually can be unique.
Okay.
Yes, so we're waiting for that to be, that is done. So now that it's gone through and created all of those, it's actually gone to identity. Let's see. So it's actually set those variables in the repo. So it's gone in there and created those for us. and we've got a direct link out to our GitHub repository, so it wants to know if we want to go ahead and push that. So we'll say yes.
Wow.
And now that's out there and configured, right? So we can take a look at that repository, which I think I have. Let's do this. So we know this is sitting in my repository. Go here. It should be one of the top ones. Yep, there's our AZD Blazor template. And with all our files there. If we go to, so some of the things it set up were, was the actions, right? So it's created our actions. So there's that same file, that Azure Dev YAML. And I think it's that. Yeah, if we go there, we can take a look at it. So this is essentially what got pushed up. It's the same information.
Yep.
The information that it set, though, was in our secrets and variables. And secrets and variables, in this case, under actions, because it's an action that it is defining those for. And they're actually included under variables. So we have client ID from our service principal that got created. It includes the environment name, so what we defined inside of our environments folder. So also in there is the location, so we find that there. And then our tenant and subscription ID, which we probably need to see if AZ Mask can throw one in there for GitHub, because that would be nice to keep those secluded as well. Anyway, all of that information is in there. So when we go back and we look at our YAML file, it's going to pull all of those from the variables and not from the secrets folder, because oftentimes you'll see people write things into secrets because they've got their client secret, or the client secret portion of a service principal in there. So this way, so that information would be stored there and not visible, right?
And a couple lines up, there is something that was written to secrets. At least it's pulling from secrets.
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at this. So if our environment Azure credentials is not empty, so okay. Oh, okay. So here's the difference, right? So it's saying if you've gone ahead and created federated credentials, right, which is what we have, we only need a client ID. And if you're not using that for whatever reason, then we're going to go ahead and see if we can use the client credentials, in which case we should have a secret in the secret in there, which is your Azure credential, which is actually a JSON object that includes your client ID, your secret, your tenant, I think it's your subscription in there too, but it may not. Definitely your tenant. It has about a half dozen different variables in there. And then that JSON payload gets pasted into the secrets location named this way so that we can come back and find it again. But fortunately, and we'll show where this is, if we go back over to Azure, we'll go into our Azure Active Directory. And how do I know if I have Azure Mask turned on?
Well, one way is that you wouldn't see your email address in the upper right.
Well, we can get rid of that then. Let's try this.
Because it does pull that out of there. And I was actually just kind of showing that. Now, Azure Mask, unfortunately, it was interesting. On one particular page of the portal, it blurred the subscription ID. And then when I went into a different resource, it didn't blur the subscription ID. And I do think part of the issue is although I don't know this for sure, is the template kind of has to keep up with whatever changes, I suppose. Maybe, I mean, I guess it wouldn't take much change in either the HTML or whatever it is using to detect certain items. It wouldn't take a whole lot of changes for it to say like, oops.
Yeah. So. Oh, there we go. Show it in the toolbar.
At least this is Contoso's Azure Active Directory. That they have had a long history with Microsoft. I remember Contoso Books and Contoso. I don't know if there's a Contoso Auto Parts. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, there was certainly the parts. There was a different division that did parts. And there's a coffee division now too that we have coming online. So, all right, I'm just going to dive into this because we'll get rid of the registration after we're done. Let's see. So if we go into app registrations, we can see okay, it does work over here with the client ID. Interesting. So we've got one that I created earlier for testing, but we've got this one here, which is the one that got created as part of the AZD pipeline config. So we've got a service principal that we're using to basically connect to Azure and be able to deploy the resources when we go ahead and make updates, or deploy the code when we have updates to the code as well. If we look at certificates and secrets, this is where you would typically go if you're doing a service principal and say, hey, I need a secret, which essentially is the password. And you can almost use it like signing in with an account, where I've got the user ID and I've got the password essentially for this particular principal to be able to access resources. In this case, though, we went down the federated credentials path. And inside of here, we've got, two sets of credentials, right? One for the main branch of the Azure, main branch of the repo that we're working in, and then the other one that is the pull request of that repo. And then we've got essentially the way to have actions run against Azure using one of those two sets of federated credentials. And we can go into this part here. That's what workload identity federation. That's what it's called. That's the underlying support or the underlying service that lets us essentially be able to use that capability inside of GitHub.
Okay.
And that's kind of what we're talking about here. So we can actually use workload identity federation for scenarios like GitHub Actions, which supports it. I believe the Azure, it might be a roadmap item for the Azure DevOps team. I'm not completely sure if that's going to be part of their pipeline, but if it does, then that'll make it easier. You can use it in both places. But right now, it's just GitHub Actions that has that.
Okay.
So it made it much easier for us and much more secure for us to be able to make that, add that authentication piece inside of GitHub Actions. The reason being is that I don't have to worry about that security information and copying that into the client, into the secure area. I don't have to worry about updating it because the workload identity federation and OpenID will essentially refresh the token as it needs to, as opposed to having a static secret sitting inside of secrets.
Yeah. So is that a form of managed identity, or is it not quite the same?
It's not quite the same, but it's similar, right? Because a managed identity, I have an identity inside of Azure AD, and that identity is, I can set permissions on it, like what it has access to, and I don't have access to the security token or the
Right.
password for that account.
Yeah.
And that all gets handled for me by Azure, right? Azure creates the managed identity, and it will rotate change the password, if you will, for that identity, or over time.
Right.
This is similar to that, but we're still basing it off of a service principal. So if I wanted to, and there was one created, I could create a secret inside of there and use that for other purposes. So
Okay.
it's more a function of, and in hindsight, it's a little, it may be closer to that, right? Because this is a service principal that has that federated connection. A managed identity is a service principal as well. It's just one that you don't have to worry about managing the password for.
Yeah, and if I understand managed identities correctly, they always represent, I hope I'm right about this. They always represent something in Azure. So basically you use it to say, hey, I have a service that should have access to another resource. And I mean, I suppose it could be this service should be able to write to my storage account. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to, number one, you don't want to go out to Azure AD and create a fake account called storage writer, and then you manage those credentials and you put them in an app settings JSON, and then you got to remember to rotate them, and so you don't want to do that. But you also don't want a service principal, because now a service principal, you'd still have to kind of manage that, or what if you decide to take that application offline or whatever. Where at least with a managed identity, Azure's like, don't worry, you're telling me that service can act on this other resource, and it's fine. I've got it.
Yes. Yeah. And when that service goes away because you've deprecated it or whatever, that managed identity goes away with it. So
yeah. And it's funny because we had this problem for years in the on-prem Windows side, and to the point that I believe that a generic term called service accounts, which I don't think was ever an official Windows term, I don't know that that's true, where basically just you would just go add something to your Azure AD to just, like I said, to be like, storage writer, and then you'd put in some password, and then you'd have to share that password with whoever IT was, or heck, maybe even the developers, which happened. That happened. And then, you would never rotate it, because even though you should rotate it, you just wouldn't. And, so if you are still on-prem and you are still in Windows, I am often surprised because that was such a norm for so long in the Windows world, I am surprised how many people do not know about managed service accounts in Windows, and also the concept of global managed service accounts in Windows, which operate across your Active Directory. And I'm constantly surprised how many times I come into an organization and they talk about like, oh yeah, there's a service account for that. You have to go here and get the password. And it's like, wow, we got past this in Windows 2008, I think, maybe even 2003. I don't remember. So it's been a while.
A little bit. Yeah, but definitely.
But yeah, that's cool to see that. Now, Workload Identity Federation, I have to admit, that's new to me. I get it though, because this reminds me a little bit of how in Azure DevOps, when you need Azure DevOps to connect to something in GitHub or another resource that they another service that maybe is easy to support, they have this concept of service connections.
Yes.
Which maybe is very similar to a service principal that Azure DevOps is sort of managing, and then reminding you that, oh, it's expired, reestablish your service connection. Maybe that's how that works. I've never really looked into how it works. It's just been like, okay. And it sounds like what you're telling me is that GitHub Actions supports this. I suppose it's a newer concept of workload identity federation, which kind of says like, hey, I'm telling you that this particular workload can act as me, and that's okay. And you don't have to come back to me and get a new token or whatever. Yes, that service connection stuff. Because you can do, it's not that you can't, it almost makes it sound like kind of what you were doing there makes it sound like, oh, you wouldn't be able to use the automated DevOps with AZD and it. And that's not true at all. You can set it up in the ASDO folder.
Yep.
It's
and
just
I think, we can try it. I would think that it would go ahead and create that service principal for you, create that service connection, which is what we have here, using a service principal. There's an automatic way of doing it where if I have permissions to go ahead and create a service principal, which I do, then in this environment, I could go ahead and go down that path. I could also do the manual path, which is somebody else has the permissions to do that. And I basically get back from them the response of what happened after they created it. So the key for whatever that might be, the tenant, the connection name, and then we should have the client ID in here as well. But basically everything I need to go ahead and use this to go back to talk to Azure with. I'm sorry, service principal ID. There you go.
Now that essentially makes it a secret, though.
It does.
What you've put in here, what you would put in here, you would not do on screen, on a stream.
Yes.
Because those are secrets that someone else could be like, oh, great, I'm going to go act as that identity. And then after you save this, I haven't used this in a long time. I'm not sure that if you come back to this screen, it just blasts it again, or if it's like, well, yes, I have one of these. But yeah, that's a secret that now you have to manage, and probably your security policy should say to rotate. And if I remember correctly, they even expire kind of automatically, maybe
They
to
do.
remind you to rotate, I guess.
Yeah. I think the longest you can create them now is 24 months. It used to be that you could have lifetime secrets, and we got away from that
Right.
over a year ago.
Right. And so that's a case where managed identities, or in this case, the workload, what was that called again? Workload Identity Federation.
Yes. There you go.
There it is. Wow, I remembered it. Cool.
Better than I did. It wasn't rolling off the tongue for me.
Okay. Workload identities. That's interesting. Okay.
So let's take a look at this here. So look at this starter environment. There are those config. When I'm and maybe it's in the docs and I'm just not recalling where it is, but the idea of when I said AZD pipeline create, how did it, or config, how did it know which one to use?
Yeah.
Right.
Let's see. So all it says here is the starter bicep template includes samples for Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions. For GitHub Actions, you can remove the ASDO directory, which you didn't do.
Yep.
And yet it went ahead and added it to GitHub Actions, but you didn't see it added anywhere to your Azure DevOps setup.
Yeah.
There could be a reason that maybe, I don't know. I wonder if Azure DevOps configure an Azure DevOps pipeline or configure a GitHub workflow. Interesting.
Oh, here we go. Edit the Azure YAML file. So my guess.
Okay.
There you go. And I'll bet you. Where did that pop out? Did it go? Yeah, there we go. There's the YAML, and I'll bet you the structure of the YAML includes pipeline, pipeline properties for by default it's GitHub. So if we wanted to do the same thing on the Azure DevOps side, we could basically add that line into the YAML file and then make that happen. If you'll notice, though, I think as we started looking at, I switched the tab up here on this page that talks about configuring the pipeline from Actions to DevOps, that I now have to create a personal access token in Azure DevOps. So that essentially, would give me some set of permissions, and they're defining the permissions that I need to include in order for all of this to run, to so that I can then have that be included inside of
So it's manual. Yeah. Okay. And if you open your Azure YAML file, we're going to see pipeline. I'm guessing actually, it might not say anything, because the default apparently is GitHub, and you put in a pipeline provider, AZDO, if you want it to be Azure DevOps. Okay.
Yep. So we could be explicit here, do pipeline provider.
Yes. And that's not correct, I don't think.
No, that was not. It was AZDO is what should be there, right?
Or
GitHub, and we're getting the IntelliSense off of
there it is.
Off of the YAML file, which is
right,
more correct than Copilot is in this case. So
less manual configuration on GitHub Actions, because AZD pipeline config creates the Azure Service Principal, configures the pipeline. Did it create a new private GitHub repository there and push the code there? Is that what it did?
So the repository already existed for us.
Okay.
Because I'd already pushed
it knew
that.
Yeah, it knew that because okay. Interesting.
If we did not, because it went down the path of, let me see, is it back here? checking the current directory for
Yeah,
a Git repository. So it's got
yeah,
that. And based off of that, it was able to figure out what the remote was.
exactly, exactly. If you did an azd init, kind of the whole end game of this, then it would do all of these things. It would say, hey, I'm going to make a private GitHub repository for you. I'm going to push the code there. I'm going to set up the Azure Service Principal so that GitHub Actions can use this, and then use that stuff we just talked about, workload identity federation, to allow that to happen. Whereas in Azure DevOps, there was a lot of other extra steps, creating a personal access token and some other things too, it looks like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I think interesting because we might have, when just thinking through this, we kind of manually did the Git remote push after creating our repo up in the place where I wanted it to be. I don't. I'm not. I don't know that a init would go ahead and create a a not local, a repository for us. I think that had to be done on our own.
Oh, no, I don't think that was init. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. If I said that, I didn't mean it. It's just that what they're
you
saying
didn't.
here
Yeah.
is they're saying here that I think once you've got a template down on your machine,
Mm-hmm.
then you can say azd pipeline config, and it goes,
Yeah.
okay.
Where are we
And
going?
yeah, and the end of their sample here, which might be interesting to try, is they've taken your code, they've pushed it up to GitHub. Well, they've taken the code that you got from the template, pushed it up to GitHub, set you up to provision the Azure resources, and then all you got to do to make something happen is go make a commit in the project,
Yep.
and it should fire up. So where we sit right now is you almost have a template that I think I could pull down, right?
Um. Actually, yeah, we do. It's up. We do have a template that you could. Well, it's yes. I have a repo that you can pull down, and that is our template. So this is all here. I think what you wanted to look at was the action side of things, and while we don't have any runs yet on that action, I think we can, because our code here is dev container. Oh, we don't have a main branch. Interesting.
Yeah, and I don't remember how that happened, but the branch on it is develop, and I don't know how we got there.
Yeah. So
For sure.
when
Dev
let's do
container,
this.
that's right.
We just have the one. Interesting. All right. Well, if we did this,
Sweet.
nice. Can you rename a ranch? Here we go.
Just make another one. Just make another one. Who cares?
Okay. I'm just curious. That was a general.
So the answer is yes,
Okay.
but my whole take is like, why? Like, who cares? Just create another pointer to the same exact spot and then delete main B. And if you never delete main B, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Yeah, that's a place where I say, like, what do I need to rename the branch for? I'm already here. I already said make a pointer to this spot, and
Oh, no.
whoops. Oh, it's awesome. You got a bunch of them.
Is it delete?
I actually don't. I think if you say git branch dash dash help, I think there's a dash D. I'm pretty sure there is. And
Good.
well, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure there's a dash D, and I think there's a difference between dash small d and dash big D, where capital D is like, it's like forcefully deletes, and
Yeah.
yeah, okay. And then the small lowercase d basically just double checks to make sure that the branch is fully merged, which in your case, who cares? So it'll be, when you say git branch dash D, and you could pick either one and pick remove or main B, it should go away. Yeah. Because Git's going to say, okay, well, let me go see if this is. First of all, it's going to say there's no upstream tracking.
Right.
So I don't care. But if there is upstream tracking, then it goes, hold on a second. You have a remote upstream assigned. It's just kind of a way to make sure you really want to force this, and you say, yep, okay, fine. But yeah, so you're set. You're good. Now, the interesting thing to me is how did we get to this place where the well, no, hold on a second, because I did I fork your code? I didn't I?
You might have. Yeah, when you did
or did I just merely
Linux one.
clone? I might have just cloned your repo. That might have been what I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I think, in fact, that makes sense if I remember it correctly. And what happened in the last episode, because we were rushing at the end, and I had Linux up, and I basically said, okay, well, let me just go clone the repo, and I just cloned it straight from your version, and so it didn't matter what branch it was in. Who cares? Because all I had to do was just run azd deploy, I think, and it just did it. Everything just happened. Well, first it said, hold on, you don't have Docker. And I was like, oh gosh, okay. But that was cool. So the trick now is we could kind of recreate what we did last time.
Yeah.
Except this time, instead of me cloning this repo, I would use azd init and point somewhere.
That's a good question, because I don't. Let's look at this.
Part of what I'm getting at is I don't, even though our end goal is to be a template on awesome azd, I don't know that that's required to use this stuff, because first of all, these might be my enterprise templates. You know, they might be our internal templates that I host somewhere. Who knows where? It doesn't matter. They could just be repos in the enterprise, and I tell a team, you want the starter pack for such and such type of application, here it is.
Yeah.
So what? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm going to double check the help while you're at it.
Okay, that let's we go here, azd init, because we might be able to, in the template string, the template to use when initialize the project, it could be, you can use the full URI.
Yeah. And you can even say the branch to initialize from.
Yeah.
So, and they have an example down there. In fact, the second example is probably the one that I want.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you have to send anything up at this point, if there's any modifications that were made.
It already did. When I did the azd pipeline config,
okay,
it did a push from my, I believe it did, because my status, yeah, on the main. Well, let's go back to the other branch. Dev container. Okay. Yeah, that's also clean. Yeah. So when it does the pipeline config, it does a push.
I'm wondering if the template, if we needed to do anything though, because the template that let's see, those variables are not, they're not in your repository history at this point, or they are? I suppose I can look. Some of the variables that you just added. Let's see. Yeah, 28 minutes ago, there was an addition. Sure. I guess what I'm getting at is I wonder if you needed to do anything. Although, see, look, none of the files there. Okay. So none of the files are different, which is good.
Right.
It's just, and this is where I get a little confused about how GitHub works. It's that Azure Dev YAML that is the thing. But
Mhm.
see, that Azure Dev YAML doesn't have any of the secrets. It's just telling you here's where to go find them. That
Yeah.
push 28 minutes ago pushed the secrets into the repository, but it didn't actually alter any of these files, which is good.
Right.
It's good.
Which makes sense. That's why they're in
Yeah.
there to begin with, right?
Yeah. So this file was here 2 days ago. It was sitting here waiting for us.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this will work, but I can find out. If you want, I can switch over and try
Yeah.
using
Let's
it.
look at yours.
Oh, whoops. Okay, so let's where's the okay, here we go. Whoops, I need to switch back to here. What have I done? I accidentally took myself out of the stream. I didn't mean to. Okay.
Oh, back. Yeah.
Okay, now we're back. So here's the plan. The plan is nothing up my sleeve. There is no whatever the name of the project is, that isn't here.
Yeah. Blazor app.
Blazor app. That project's not here. Then I go to here we go. We have this, which is the AZD Blazor template by Rich Ross. And we know, let's see what's up here. We know that there's a dev container branch, which works fine. It's good enough for today. We'll deal with all that. And what I can do is, according to AZD init help, I can initialize a template to your current local directory from a branch other than main. Okay. So that's essentially this. Now, I think what I want to do is, do I want to create the directory first? I don't remember.
I would no, you don't. You want
It's
to
gonna clone it in the way
exactly.
Okay, it's gonna do what I want basically.
Yeah.
And so the branch name was
Dev container.
dev container. And again, it could have been anything. So this isn't super important. But the repo, I got to go get this from there. I suppose we could figure it out, but
it's Rich Ross /AZD Blazor template.
Yeah, that's how lazy I am, though. And
then I got to delete the GitHub part.
Do you think that's it?
No,
it's the GitHub repo URL. That's what I want. GitHub repo URL.
Oh, the full URL or owner. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Let's try that. Initializing a new project. The current directory is not empty. No, I don't want it to be here. Oh, and then they're like, okay, well, see you later. So let's go ahead and make a Blazor app folder. All right. And then we'll head in there. And then we'll do that again. Downloading the template.
That's fine because it's empty.
Okay, downloading the template. Cool. Enter a new environment name. And I think I'm going to be okay with these defaults. It's telling me I need to get the latest version, but I guess it's not really telling me that. Seems fine. New project initialized. So you can view the template code. Okay, great. Now they did some other interesting things for me. They initialized a Git repo. Because if I say Git status, I can see that it's like, wow, you got a lot of new files. Got a lot of, it'd be shame if something happened to them. So I can also say AZD help, and we have the next one I want is it was pipeline config, right? So if I do nothing else but an AZD pipeline config, this is what I'm wondering. Is if I just do this, oh, I'm not logged in. Interesting. Okay, so AZD auth log in. And let's see what happens here. It's like sign into your account. I don't know that I'm going to get anything. Yep, authentication complete. It just used that. Nothing to worry about there too much. So they're like, okay, you're logged in. And so now we'll try this again. Please select a subscription to use. Fine. And where do I want it to be? East US sounds great. Setting up the connection. Oh, sure. I haven't used the GitHub CLI. So what is your preferred protocol? We'll do this. Authenticate Git with your GitHub credentials. Yes. How would you like? Whoa, look at all this stuff that I've never done before. So I'm going to need this code. Oh, great. Although I'm not sure that that code matters. I don't know that anybody could. Well, whatever.
They could sign in with their credentials, but that's not going to help you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, because here's the part where I have to two-factor in. So I'm off screen being asked to two-factor into GitHub, which is good. And now, let's see. Okay, so it's continuing. I hope I didn't blow me. Okay, good. What do you want to do? The remote. Okay, so it recognizes. It says, okay, I checked your current directory. You are a Git repository, but you don't have an origin remote. So that must be maybe that's their criteria.
Yeah.
No origin remote. So do you want to create? And I think that's cool that they say, hey, well, where do you want to do it? Do you want a new project, an existing? And this is great. I want a new project. That actually is what I want. And now I've accidentally fixed that again. So enter the name for the repository. I think Blazor app is going to be fine. And so what's neat here, I kind of wanted to see this, is I'm imagining like I just found your template, or maybe I saw a tweet from you or a blog post, and you said, hey, my template is here, and here it is on GitHub. And so I say, okay, let me just use AZD to bring it down and configure everything, push it up to my own repo, because I could always fork your repo. I could do that. That's what I did last time. But I push it down. I could say, set up the GitHub pipeline. Just do it. Just do it all. And that's what it's doing here.
It's creating the principles, doing the hooking up the federation, saving all those values, and
now I wonder if I can get. Am I going to be able to see it if I have GitHub?
You should be able to see it now because it's already created the project or the repo.
Right. So here I am. And I really just want to see repositories. Oddly enough, you'd think this would be a little easier. Your repositories. Okay, so here we go. Blazor app updated 1 minute ago. And then it's like saying like, hey, oh, that's interesting. Maybe it's because I didn't say to go ahead and do it. Ah, that's right.
I'm still waiting. Yeah.
All right, so I think
let's see. Success.
So there we go. Here it is. Now, if I run to actions, am I going to see that this is, yes, it's queued.
Yeah. So click the.
So now it's doing stuff. And do I click here to see more?
Yeah.
Or do I, okay. Yep. Initialize containers, log in with, so yeah, things are happening right now. Logging into the portal here, just to see if we're going to see these things start to pop up. Not yet, though, right? Because I think it's just
provision infrastructure is a little ways down. So that's checking out all the code, logging in with the credentials. There you go. So now it's doing the provisioning, creating, updating resources.
You can view detailed progress in the portal. Oh, although it thinks it's done, though.
No, it just did the resource group. It still has pieces to put inside of it, like the app service plan, the app service.
Okay.
But that's a link to, because ultimately this is a deployment in your subscription. So there's a link that basically lets you go ahead and see those resources.
Right. And check this out.
Yeah.
So we've got the resource group in Azure, just like it says here.
Yep.
Resource
You should
group,
be able to do a
GitHub Dev is
refresh.
done. It also says the app service plan is done. So we should start seeing. There it is. Here's the app service plan is in. But it did say the web app failed, though.
Yeah. So we're hard coding the web app name.
Oh, that's right. That didn't get fixed or changed.
It did that.
Yeah.
Well,
okay. Now I remember when we talked about this. Yeah. Yeah, I remember. So the point is, though, is we're pretty close. We're pretty close because I pulled this template down direct from GitHub, didn't clone it, anything. And I think we just gotta, there's just a little bit to tweak here and there, but that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
But you're right. Provision infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's using the same
Oh,
prefix and environment name because that already exists. Yeah.
and this has to be unique or worldwide?
So the app service has to be unique
Yeah.
across Azure websites.net. App service plan is fine because that's internal to your subscription.
Right. And so that actually kind of explains why they went with the tag method there.
I think so.
I guess. Okay. So we can switch back to that. And and then this will be pretty close to submitting, right? So
yeah. I mean that's that would be the this check of somebody else running your code is a good test. So making sure that we make a unique app service name is probably one of the last things we need to do.
Yep. But that's pretty cool. I really like how I can see the workflow of bring down the project, whether you clone it from an internal repo or use the AZD command to point right to where you're getting it from, which it did, and then pipeline config was frankly all you needed to do. If you just want to just see it work, so there's a lot of ways to see it work. You could do AZD provision, then you could deploy, or that AZD up, which kind of does both. Is that right?
Yep.
Or you could say, you know what, go ahead and set up the GitHub Actions stuff for me too, so that as I start working in here, it just keeps deploying. You have a lot of choices.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then you can pick and choose what you need, what you need for your workflow.
And now if I say AZD down, it's going to take it down in Azure, right?
Correct. It'll get rid of everything there.
So cool. I don't know how long that's going to take, and it is time for stand up. So
there you go.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. That was fun to walk through.
Yeah, and that mostly worked pretty well. That was cool. I mean, and the thing that was neat about it, that's always neat about it, is at the end just kind of saying like, okay, what's going to happen now?
Right.
Because we certainly didn't plan any of that. All right. Pretty cool.
Very cool, though. Yeah. All right. I'll let you get stand up. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We really appreciate seeing you. And follow us on Twitter at TheDevTalkShow. Going to try and start getting some announcements up for when these things are happening, which means that we actually have to be kind of producer-like and put together topics in a schedule. But that's beginning to happen. So thank you all for joining us. And Rich, thanks again. And we'll see you all next time on The Dev Talk Show.